Hi, friends. Let's do a collective reading. Today's theme that's coming up with the Astro Dice is Gemini, the fourth house, and the North Node. The North Node is currently in Aries, the South Node is in Libra. The fourth house, technically connected to Cancer and related to our foundations, our home, our lineage, our ancestors. Sometimes it's the house of father. And Gemini is ruled by Mercury. I'm just throwing out some words in case it's helpful for you to kind of root into the astrology of this reading. What I feel here is that there is a return to legacy, perhaps, and maybe a re-examination. With Gemini coming up and the fourth house, it feels like we're talking about our roots and maybe talking about both sort of the light and the shadow of our lineage. That could look like looking at the patterns of your ancestry. And for a lot of us, that means recognizing the ways that we come from both the colonizer and the colonized, from the perpetrators and the perpetrated. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's appreciating duality. And Gemini is a sign that really brings us into duality and helps us to see both sides, not in like a both sidesism kind of way, but more so Gemini kind of opens up to nuance and possibility. And so it can help us to get out of a black and white mindset, especially when we're looking at difficult material, like considering the ways that, again, both we and the people that we come from have perpetrated harm and have also been harmed. And that's a really important thing to do constantly or near constantly, is to kind of recognize the ways that we can be both beautiful and wonderful and kind, and also the ways that we ourselves can perpetuate harm, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So in today's reading, I have not pulled any cards yet, but let's get into it. I posted something on Threads last night, and you all should go follow me there because I think I'm funny and interesting on Threads. At Feeling Loudly, and on Instagram too, and YouTube. But I posted something there last night that was basically on this topic, and it was about how some people are so attached to an identity of goodness that they find it really challenging, sometimes near impossible, to face their shadows and to face the ways that they have been harmful. And it creates this like really difficult, sometimes unbreakable, if you're trying to interact with someone like this, sort of like ego defense system where they're so, again, attached to this identity of goodness and like purity that they cannot open up to see the ways that they're contributing to a problem or even kind of causing or creating a problem. And so I think right now we need to kind of look at how that shows up within ourselves and within the people that we're surrounded by and within the people that we come from. I know personally, I absolutely have had to unpack this in myself, the ways that I've overattached to goodness. And it's not an individual problem, it's a societal problem. We live in a society, especially when you're looking at like Christianity and white supremacy, that focuses on perfectionism as sort of like a tool to keep people oppressed. We focus on goodness, we hyper focus on goodness, and it removes us from reality and it removes us from duality. So let me talk about the cards. The cards are the Magician reversed, Death, and the High Priestess reversed. Okay, wow. All right, so with the Magician reversed, this to me can often look like manipulative energy. It can look like us using our words and our gifts, not necessarily for evil, but using them with ill intent. Again, that intent or intention might not be conscious to us. I have a little thing on my beanie, it's annoying me. It might not be conscious to us, but it still motivates and animates us. And so there's a call for us to get really clear about what our intention is. there's a call for us to get really clear and maybe discerning about what the intentions of other people might be. Sometimes often we can see other people's shadows more clearly than they can. And that doesn't mean that they're conscious of that and they're behaving with malice, but oftentimes we've stuffed it so far deep into the sort of ethers of our mind and our psyche and a subconscious material that we just truly can't see, often until someone else points it out to us, or often until we encounter it in someone else and it triggers us so much that it causes us to self-reflect and see the ways that we are behaving in that way ourselves. And when we see something mirrored back to us, it can be really triggering, because when you haven't confronted that within yourself, it's really difficult to face it in another person. And so with death, there's a lot of potent transformation that's available here. Let me just back up. The magician is also Mercury energy. And so there's something really important about our words. Where are our words coming from? Are our words truthful? Are they genuine? Are they honest? Are they rooted in some type of like positive or progressive intention? Or is there some degree of maybe manipulating the truth and creating the outcome that we desire, or attempting to create the outcome that we desire in conversations and in connections with other people? This can look like literally using our words to manipulate other people. It can look like perpetuating harmful ideas, spreading propaganda, spreading ideas that support a truth and a reality that we're comfortable with, but that is not necessarily the capital T truth. And so we're seeing this at a grand scale right now as we watch Israel. And I think, like, to back up to this idea of goodness, being attached to goodness, we see both the US and Israel and other highly colonial nations and oppressive nations that are really attached to this identity of goodness, where they have this sort of like thick veneer and veil of self-identification as the good guy. And then we see how harmful and how destructive that becomes at a grand scale. And we as humans, as individuals, are just sort of microcosms of the whole. And so this is a pattern that we notice in individuals. When I posted this on Threads, quite a few people chimed in and were like, oh, do you know my mom? Do you know my sister? Do you know my cousin? And so it's something that I think most of us have experienced. Like, you see a person who has this like thick armor of goodness, and it can be near impossible to get through to them, near impossible to challenge their self-identity, especially if they harm you, especially if they hurt you, and are unwilling to take accountability. And we're seeing that at such, again, a grand scale with the ways that the US and Israel and other nations, other colonial nations like us, I say us because I'm in the US, cannot take accountability, cannot own up to their mistakes, cannot make reparations, cannot change their behavior, because they're so fixed in this identity of being the good guy. And it's extremely destructive and scary, but there's also room for transformation when we begin to understand how this operates within ourselves. Because although as individuals, we can't alone change the world in tremendous ways, I mean, with some exceptions, we can make changes in our lives and in our personal relationships and in our local communities. And those changes have a ripple effect. If you think about a community that becomes more conscious, or a community or a family that becomes more conscious, that impact doesn't just stop there. It does ripple out. It does make a difference in the world slowly but surely. And our final card coming through here, the High Priestess reversed, is telling me that there's really a need to understand that when we feel that call to cling to our goodness, to cling to our purity, we're actually denying and suppressing our truth. We're denying and suppressing our intuition. The High Priestess is someone who's very wise and very skilled at seeing through the veil, very skilled at transmitting the truth. But they can also be a mysterious figure who kind of hangs back and doesn't show all their cards. And so that's not like, you wouldn't look at the high priestess and be like, oh, that's a totally pure and good and kind and warm figure. Like, the high priestess knows darkness, and the high priestess reversed needs to recognize their own darkness, quote, their own shadow, in order to approach the world with more honesty and to approach the world with more self-recognition. And that heals. Bye.